by delivering value, it ends up that people give him what I call certificates of appreciation. Most people think, well, if I get money, I'm taking money from somebody else. But if we're delivering value, there's an infinite amount of value that we as human beings can deliver to each other.
You are listening to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, helping you take the simple actions to master personal development and create the life you yearn for. I am your host, Agi Keramidas, and my mission is simple: to inspire you to take action towards a purposeful and fulfilling life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable entrepreneurs, authors, thought leaders, spiritual teachers. So, if you're ready to find practical insights that you can implement right now, make sure you follow the podcast and get the episodes as soon as they are released. Today's episode is about how our beliefs shape our financial situation and about looking at money as certificates of value delivered. Today I am delighted to speak with Richard Friesen. Richard, you have 30 years of experience in the financial world and trading, and you have also trained as a therapist, coaching traders and financial professionals. You are also the author of the book, A Private Conversation with Money, discussing how our beliefs shape our financial situation, and you are passionate about helping professionals and business leaders to increase their personal effectiveness with joy and grace. Richard, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to speak.
Agi, it's a pleasure to be here. As I mentioned before, I've listened to a few of your podcasts and the quality of your guests and the ideas that come out of it. So I'm honored to be here, and thank you.
It's a real pleasure. And as I was telling you just before we pressed the record button, the topic of finances and financial situation is a topic that I see that it has a lot of traction and popularity in the podcast. So I was really excited when I connected with you to discuss about our relationship with money, really, and how our beliefs and all those things affect our financial situation. So that will be our topic for today.
Excellent.
Before we go there, I would like to ask you a little bit about your background, your story, and especially that transition. You talk about a voice that you heard that really changed things for you as a result. So can you please take us there and describe that so we can get an understanding of who Richard is?
Sure. I worked for a large arbitrage firm. We traded option stocks and futures, lots of capital, PhD quants figuring out values. And then I went on my own. And I was very, very careful the first year. I made $125,000. And for some people, that might seem like a lot. But in that financial world, it's really tiny. And so next year I made 150, then 175, then 200, and then 200. And I seemed to be capped at that. And what happened was in April of 95, I heard a voice. It was the middle of the night. And this voice said, "Rich, you're only worth $200,000 a year." It woke me up. I looked around the room. I fully expected somebody else to be in the room. My wife was sleeping peacefully beside me. There was nobody else there. So I came to the realization that voice was something deep inside of me. So I showered, got dressed, drove across the Golden Gate Bridge to the Pacific Exchange. And it got there so early, the doors were still closed. And I thought about that voice as I sat on the concrete steps, thought about my life, my identity, who I was, what I believed. And when the doors opened, I went to the pit where I normally trade. Now, Rich Friesen was a philosophy major, MA in clinical psychology, not really that aggressive. And so I always stood at the back of the pit. Now, young people don't know what pits are anymore, where people are yelling and screaming and buying and selling. So it's all electronic. But at that time, all the orders came to a pit and people competed for them by yelling and screaming. I always stood at the very back. And I would carefully pick out an order here and carefully buy something here and carefully sell something there. Because I told myself I didn't want to take a lot of risk. But it turns out it was something deeper than that. So that day I thought about that voice, that the pit was totally empty. I got there so early. And I thought, I'm done with that voice. And I went and stood in the best spot in the pit, right between the two busiest brokers and right in front of the order book official, so I could hear all the orders and be right there. So I stood in that spot. So the rest of the market makers, brokers, and traders came in, and the guy who always stood there, and you got it, and most of your audience won't appreciate this, so I'll explain it, is in the pit. You don't own a spot. You don't rent a spot. That's commandeered by the most aggressive, the person with the most capital, the meanest, the person who can command bullies, who command the social hierarchy. And so here's Rich Friesen, philosophy major, stepping into the best spot in the pit. So the rest of everybody else started coming in, and the guy who always stood there kind of looked at me, looked at the clock, and a couple of minutes before the bell went off, he just tapped me on the shoulder saying, okay, young man, you can go now. I didn't move. And so the whole pit went, whoa. And everyone kind of stood back because they knew what was going to happen. And this shoving match ensued. And we were warned immediately by the book staff that if we got into a fight, it would be a $10,000 fine for each of us. So I held my ground. The bell went off. And normally Rich Friesen, just, careful. I don't want to blow your ears off, so I'm going to go move back a little bit from the mic. I went, buy 50, sell you 20, buy 30, sold, buy them. And the pit thought Rich Friesen had gone berserk. But I ended up making many times the $200,000 that year, and I went on to build a trading firm. And then what's fascinating is about a third of the traders following my system would just make money. A third of them would do okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. But a third of them just couldn't make it. Same markets, same process, same trading. Mm-hmm. So I thought, what if they all had their internal limitations like I did? So it turned out that my sister, Wendy, was a budding hypnotherapist just out of school and very eager to ply her trade. So I brought her in. And sure enough, one of them come from abject poverty in West Virginia in the United States. It's a really poor area. And he had, dozens of cousins and uncles. There was a huge family constellation. But if he got wealthy, his family would reject him because that wasn't part of their culture. Another one, he grew up with a handicapped brother, younger brother. And younger brother got all the attention because of the handicaps. And so he felt resentful and left out. And he knew that if he made money, his mom would come to him to take care of his little brother. So he solved that problem. He just didn't make money. And there was many more examples of that under hypnosis we found, just like I had, an internal voice. So my mission now has been, is there a process where we can uncover those hidden voices for everybody? And that has led to the writing of the book, Private Conversation with Money.
Thank you. That's a very fascinating story, the way you were saying it. And there were some things that made an impression on me. One was what you were saying about the limit that you were hitting of the 200K, which I have heard of that as the term the money thermostat.
Yes.
If we go above that, then it drops us abruptly to reach that. What I found very intriguing, the way you explain it, was that you talked about, some of your clients following a system, which a system should be, provided you follow it. If the system is good, it will lead to the same results. But it is very interesting, the observation that not everyone following the same system had the same results. And I have also experienced similar things with myself in my own, journey of personal development. And it is very intriguing that realization that it's not just about, doing all the actions, ticking all the boxes
Mm-hmm.
in terms, of course, these things are important and necessary, but there is a hidden element that many of us are completely unaware of, and really it guides us to a limit of money in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to ask you specifically about it, because you mentioned the voice that you heard. If we can call that a limiting belief or a
Mm-hmm.
set of limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs of its. Do you think, and I will I will start with this question. You mentioned hypnotherapy. Do you think this is a way for someone that wants to understand what their limiting beliefs are about money and financial situation? Do you think that hypnotherapy is a way to discover that?
There's just so many paths, and there's so many good
Mm-hmm.
books and so many ways to do it. Some people find it
Mm-hmm.
through meditation, others through
Mm-hmm.
hypnotherapy, others through different kinds of therapy. When I work with a client one-on-one, what I will do is I'll just pay attention to their physiology when they talk about money or their finances. And at some point, there will be a physiological expression, a grimace, a tight mouth, a hunch over, a tense voice. And then I will follow that and I'll say, become your face right now. What is your face like? Oh, it's tense. I've got a furrowed brow. I'm breathing shallow. Okay, let's exaggerate that. Tighten the breathing, tighten the face, tighten the breathing, tighten the face, tighten the voice. Okay, what are you feeling right now? I'm feeling really left out. I'm feeling lonely. How old do you feel? I feel like I'm 5. What's going on with 5-year-old Brian? I'm hiding under the bed because my dad came home drunk again. I could hear him downstairs. So the physiology then leads to, if we exaggerate it, to that internal voice. And then I'll say, can I talk to 5-year-old Brian? And then we'll start to have some discovery. So what we do is basically look for all those voices, those internal conflicts, and we don't judge them. It's not like we're trying to change them, but then we invite them to just be listened to. And once we listen to that voice, we can ask it, would it like to improve its skill levels? Then we can start to upgrade it. But it's all about developing rapport with all those voices. Now, many of those voices are there for a very good reason. So in context, sometimes it works to be angry. It works to be pushy, to set your boundaries, sometimes to be soft and loving. So depending on the context. So we don't eliminate those voices. We just invite them to a proper context where they really shine and work the best.
I suppose you've had people working with you, and after having this kind of realization, having a sort of epiphany. Yes, major aha
Mm-hmm.
moment, because whatever happened at 5 years old, we usually don't have conscious access
Right.
to it. We don't even know that it is there affecting our financial behaviors. So I suppose that's what I was asking, whether you've had this kind of seeing clients have epiphanies and telling you, wow, I didn't even know that this was there, or something like that.
Yeah. What you're pointing out is that sometimes that all of a sudden the client will go, oh my God, I've had this voice. It no longer serves me, or not in my context of my work. And then start building from that. Other times, sometimes the trauma is so deep, so painful, that it's just sanding away. It just takes time and love and attention to start to create a new belief and a new identity, because sometimes it's damaged it at a very primal stage, and that isn't going to shift. We all have developed survival mechanisms, and those survival mechanisms were there when we needed them to help us survive. But oftentimes the process of that survival we incorporate, and then nobody believes this, but we actually create a world that allows that survival mechanism to be used. So, an example is if a woman grew up in an abusive relationship with her father, many of them find men who will provide that same environment because they know how to survive it. In my own life, I've made choices that don't serve me very well because, I grew up with a depressive mom and narcissistic father. So as a result, I have recreated those in my life because I know that Rich Friesen can survive them. Whereas, can I survive in a more wonderful environment? And our survival mechanism says, we don't know about that. As crazy as that seems, it keeps coming up.
I want to take a short break from this episode and quickly let you know about something I'm sure you will find useful. We are drowning in information, but starving in wisdom. This podcast, for example, has almost 300 episodes, and as you can imagine, there is ample wisdom in them. But who has the time to listen to 300 podcasts? My mission as a knowledge broker is to convert this vastness of knowledge and distill it into wisdom, into implementable insights. So I have created a free special resource for you. I have chosen the top 10 podcast episodes that offer the greatest value in 3 main categories of life. First, the top 10 episodes about money. Second, the top 10 episodes about health. And third, the top 10 episodes on mastering your personal development. This free ebook is a curated catalog of those top 10 podcast episodes in each category that will offer you the greatest value and in the shortest time. To get it, go to personaldevelopmentmasterypodcast.com/top10 and you will also find the link in the show notes. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Thank you, that's very insightful, the way you said it about the survival mechanism and how we recreate situations in our life that this survival mechanism can actually work and prove its point of existence.
Yes.
I would like to ask you, Rich, about your book, A Private Conversation with Money. And the first question is, what was it that motivate you to write the book?
Yeah, well, I had the experience in the financial markets watching people and their belief system express itself in limited financial outcomes. And so and I look at my own experience of my own internal limits. In fact, I still have internal limits. I look at myself now and, I've raised the bar, but they're still there. So then I thought, how could I really help people? And so we take character Joe. Joe is an activist, left-leaning. The world isn't fair. We need more social justice. Capitalism is just a way for the wealthy to, rob the poor. And in the middle of the night, it's a setup. He meets a character, Money. Money comes in much like that voice that I experienced in the middle of the night and wakes him up and says, Joe, it's time for some conversations. So the bulk of the book then is Joe fighting money, Joe arguing with money, and a series of Socratic type conversations where Joe comes to peace by delivering value to others. And by delivering value, it ends up that people give him what I call certificates of appreciation. Most people think, well, if I get money, I'm taking money from somebody else. But if we're delivering value, there's an infinite amount of value that we as human beings can deliver to each other. And if I deliver value to you, Augie, and you pay me, you're giving me certificates of appreciation. In a previous podcast, I forget who it was with, they talked about their appreciation journals, waking up and just being appreciating the world. And so if I look at money as a certificate of appreciation, the more money I have in the bank, oh my God, the more value I've delivered to the world. Now, that's not to say that money is the only way to deliver value. My family, my kids, my grandkids, my community. You look at Martin Luther King, you look at people who've changed the world for the better. had nothing to do with money. But for those in the commercial realm, if we think about money as a certificate of the value we've delivered, all of a sudden that tension, that stress around being wealthy or successful just disappeared, because those are certificates of appreciation.
I like it very much, the certificates of appreciation. I would like to ask you, that shift you talked about from making money to delivering value. How can one recognize that, in their mindset, this shift has not happened yet? My focus is still more on making money.
Mm-hmm.
And what's something practical that one can do to start shifting the way of thinking that money is a result? It's not the main thing, it is the value delivering.
Yeah, well, we in the book we have, and also I'm going to give your listeners a free online course. And if they go to conversations.money/mastery, there will be a course with a dozen exercises that bring out that exactly. So the question was, how do you make that shift? What do you do it? So one of the things we do is we have an exercise, the 3-chair exercise, where I sit, if a person's in my office, I put a chair across from them, and I put a third chair watching both of them, and I have them address money. I ask them to bring in something that represents money. I have clients that brought in gold, some brought in a pile of $100 bills or a bank statement, whatever it is for you. And I have them actually talk to money. And the conversation if you haven't done this, it doesn't sound real, but they'll look at money. I'll have a client says, "You always leave me. I get some of you and you always just go away. I never can keep you. I can't hold on to you. What's some?" And then they'll go into swear words and be really angry. Then I have them sit in the chair for money. I'll say, "What do you think about Sally? She's so angry at me. I don't want to be around her." So we go back and forth with the conversation. Then we have them sit in the chair of the wisdom chair and say, "What do you notice about this relationship?" And oftentimes they'll have the wisest epiphanies about that relationship, and then go back and sit in their own chair and then have a new relationship with money. So there's many exercises that we do, along with the reframe of certificates of appreciation. We look at our history, what beliefs our parents had, what we've absorbed from that. And if somebody reads the book, goes along with Joe, fights money all the way, and actually, if you just give somebody a different belief system and they haven't struggled through it and arrived at it on their own, it's not as powerful. So our job is to give people the tools to arrive at a relationship with money that honors their values and is in rapport.
From your experience, Rich, are those limiting beliefs, those voices, completely unique to each individual, or there are some big patterns that are very common and prevalent?
Yeah, so working with traders especially, some of my clients are like professional money managers, traders, and there are maybe 6 major issues that keep up. And then there's a few peripheral ones, and there's, always little variations. But it's a major thing. And if I look at my clients who are just around money, there's some major patterns. And some of them are just internalized beliefs from the family. Oh, money's easy come, easy go. Money's the root of all evil. Money, you got to hold it tight because people are going to take it from you. The world's not fair. It's going to treat you badly. The wealth have all the money, and as a result, they're not sharing it, and the world is evil. So you have all these messages you grew up with. Oh my gosh. And if you're a good-hearted person, you want the best in the world, well, it's so difficult. So my job is to reframe things so that as a good-hearted person, that you want the best for the world, you want to honor your values, and you want to deliver value, and have a great financial future. So that's the invitation that I make.
So, what would you say to someone listening right now then and realizing that, you know what, I have really realized that my relationship with money, there is something there that I hadn't seen before. There is something there that maybe prevents me from really taking my life and everything
Mm-hmm.
that I want to a different level. What would you recommend, shall we say, as some kind of an actionable step to move towards that direction? Maybe of first of all clarifying it, or even better, changing it. I know it's a complex topic, but let's say as a step, some kind of action, something that can be implemented.
Okay, so the first step is awareness. So you brought up,
Hmm.
well, I may have some things and thoughts and stuff. So right now,
Hmm.
what are you aware of in terms of thoughts that come up? If you're willing to do this, in terms of just right now, what thoughts pop up in your head about money and your relationship to money? Okay, don't answer, but just, yeah. So, and I'm not going to ask you to broadcast that to everybody, but just notice what thoughts about money. If you were in that chair talking to money, just notice what you
Hmm.
say. So the first step is awareness.
Mm,
And we do that without
mm,
judgment. It's called acceptance. These are what I call the golden keys. First is awareness, and our exercises bring all these voices, all these conflicting parts and beliefs, they bring them to the surface so we're aware. Then the next is acceptance. So rather than beating ourselves up for having this perception, we say, wow, is that fascinating? I'm really curious about all those voices and beliefs I have. That is interesting. So if a person can come
mm,
to, it's like a anthropologist or maybe an archaeologist who's digging down through sedimentary layers. If we can just say, it's not right for me to have that belief, well, then your awareness is limited. So if as you dig down through the layers, you just say, this is fascinating. And then the third thing is agency. Okay, so I had these beliefs. I'm going to make myself aware of them. I accept them. Now, what do I want right now? So we can go through the step of awareness, acceptance, and then agency, and creating a higher level that is aware of everything down here, is accepting everything down there, but it can now ask, so what would I like?
Can you tell me a little bit more about the second step, the acceptance bit? Because, you know, the awareness is something that personally I find that it is, let's say, simpler. There are tools, exercises, questions
Mm-hmm.
that can guide you to recognize. Then from the acceptance, and what I mean is really true acceptance, and not just say, oh, yes, these are my limiting beliefs and I accept them, but really forgiving, if that is an appropriate
Mm-hmm.
word for this, forgiving yourself for having this limitation. Is there some kind of additional step there, element to, you know, to actually accept it and not just, you know, say, okay, this is it, I accept it? I like how you laugh
Yeah.
to my
So the
question.
acceptance part, as you're pointing out, and I think why you're pointing to it and wanting to drill down, because for some, this is a real challenge. Many of my clients say, I motivate myself to get where I am today because I judge myself. I'm brutal to myself. I push myself. And if I didn't judge myself, oh my God, I would just turn into a puddle and not do anything.
Mhm.
So people have a process of motivate them through negative thoughts and behaviors and judgments. And it's revolution. I mean, they can't even imagine accepting themselves as they are. And at the same time,
Mhm.
still moving forward and getting things done. So one of the exercises that I've done for myself, and some clients, I'll invite them to do so, is every time you have a judgmental thought, you get a big jar or pot and you put $1 in it. And the first time I did this, I went to the bank, got $51 bills. And by the time the morning was over, I was out of money and the jar was full. So it's just awareness. And with when some people realize how often they just have these little mini things, mini judgments, little, no. It's the awareness itself is almost curative to say, oh, this isn't very helpful. I was not aware of how much I beat myself up.
Thank you. And the reason, of course, that I was asking that, and I think that's why when you started laughing, you realized that I was asking on my behalf and based on my own, personal experience. So it was a genuine question coming from Aggie, because I've had this challenge of really acceptance of these beliefs which I have recognized. So thank you for this. Also, the practical exercise, I might do that with the jar.
Well, let me know how it goes. I'd be fascinated.
Sure. Richard, I do have some final quick-fire questions to ask you before to wrap it up. Before I do that, can you direct the listener to what is the best place to connect with you? And you also mentioned about a gift that you offer to the listeners.
Yeah. I really love connecting with the people. And so rich@mindmuscles.com is my email. And if they go to conversations.money/mastery, there will be a coupon for the online course. And the online course takes you through all the exercises that are in the book. And you can take them at your own leisure. If you have any questions or comments, you can send me an email.
Thank you very much. I will have all the links in the show notes.
Okay.
And Rich, can I ask you a couple of quick fire questions as well, which I always ask. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Oh, it's moving closer to reality. One of your hosts before, and I listened to a podcast, said when you have expectations that are different than reality, you get angry, you get upset. And so our job is to develop maps and models that are in rapport with reality. So for me, transformation is always looking to how can I adopt my maps and models so they work with reality much better and get me to where I want to go.
And let's say hypothetically you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give him?
Oh my gosh. I think of that 18-year-old boy, so naive, tall, 6'2", skinny, 170 pounds, unsure of himself in the world. I'd put my arms around him and give him a hug and just say, "You're okay, Rich. You're okay."
Thank you. Rich, I want to thank you very much for this conversation I had with you. I think there were some important topics that we discussed and some practical elements that, my intention with the podcast is not just to provide information. We have enough of it in our era. Information is... It's overwhelming information. We starve for wisdom, which is, the actionable thing, something that one can actually implement and not just accumulate more knowledge. So I believe there have been quite a few of those today. So thank you very much. I want to wish you the very best with your mission and what you're doing as a contribution to your clients and the world in general. And I will leave it to you for your last parting words.
Well, thank you, Aggie. Tell me how the jar fills up as you put your pound notes in it rather than dollars. But keep me posted, and just love to continue the conversation, and just wish everybody out there rapport with money, meaning, and success.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you got valuable insights from today's episode. For your free ebook with the top 10 podcast episodes that offer the greatest value in 3 main categories of life, go to personaldevelopmentmasterypodcast.com/top10. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,